This is the Maibatsu MonstroCiti. It was released in the Mercenaries updates in 2023. It's in the off-road class, and I gotta say, I expected it to be bigger. I mean, a Conjo is bigger than this thing. Weren't Maibatsus that were the Monstro names supposed to be these gigantic monster trucks? I mean, I was expecting a monster truck, not a toothpick. And what it doesn't do in size, it more than makes up for in its price. In true GTA fashion, this will run you $1,485,000, and with the HSW upgrades, it'll drain your shark card for another $1,109,000. That means you're into this thing for $2.5 million before you purchase a single upgrade for a vehicle that barely takes up a full parking space. Its upgrades are okay with the typical off-road stuff, but it just doesn't have that bring me to a car show feel like, say, the Draugr does. In fact, I feel like I'd be embarrassed to take it to get the groceries. Still, I'm told this is the new big off-road vehicle, that it's faster than everything else, and in the off-road class at least, and it's got HSW, so let's take it on the track and find out what it can do. First up, we head over to Grapeseed Circuit, where we test acceleration, handling, and braking. And before I start, I don't see a point right now of testing anything other than HSW. If I do, I'll just update them in the comments, or if we find a reason to test them or something that I need to tell you about, I'll just send out an update in another video. As for the Monstro, it's a hard vehicle to pin down. It's squirrely like all HSWs, but it's not terribly out of control. It seems to work its way up to speed, but it seems so powerful that it straightens right up from a turn when you put the pedal down. The braking is what I expect from a compact, so it's really a trick of doing just enough brake work so that it'll travel through the turn and not spin out in the process. And that's a very delicate balance, and even when it works, you're not quite sure you did it right. I do feel like, as an off-road vehicle, I left a little on the track, but the mission here was to find out what it was capable of, not how to crash over and over, getting some top time. So how did it perform? It was on par with a Pariah and a Torero XO. Yeah, two supercars and the fastest sport car. Yeah, at a time of 124.588, it's absurd at how fast it was. And per lap, that's 5 seconds faster than a Draugr, if you're wondering. So yeah, that's probably going to hurt some feelings. Welcome to Route 68, where we test the top speed. And how fast can this thing get from point A to point B? That's the plan. Usually with cars like this, it's too fast for its own good, even on this relatively straight track. But the Monstro, it did a pretty good job, and it never really got out of control enough to maybe end up in a weeds or take a piece of road with it. It didn't feel fun or fast, though, so I thought my results were going to be a little bit low. It just kind of went through the paces and got to the other side. But once again, it fooled me, because it was only a second off the Pariah's time and a second faster than a non-HSW Divest 8. Yeah, at 144.004, that happened. If you're ready to cry, that's 12.544 seconds faster than a Camacho. I guess it's time for some humble pie. Next up is really what we've all been waiting for. Going down is the off-road section, and I immediately knew this thing was born for dirt. I mean, it's off-road, right? It felt fast, and the back end was a little bit easier to keep straight. It would catch you if you weren't paying attention, but it seemed like it was naturally at home here, and it was having fun. I kind of felt like, well, this is its redeeming quality, right? So you're thinking this thing absolutely crushed it against its off-road cousins, right? Wrong. It did a 115.144. That's a tenth off the trophy truck time. That's also 4 seconds slower than the Draugr, which is the fastest off-road vehicle we've tested at this track. This left me completely baffled, and I ran it again with similar results. I think if this was a straighter off-road track, then maybe it would have a chance to take on its competition, but with its bouncy suspension and propensity to want to roll over once it gets in any kind of airborne situation, I think it'll be very difficult to keep it straight, even in the straights. So alas, here we are. In the Grove is where we test the HSW against its rival HSW vehicles. And I did have an issue with this track. The vehicle is listed as Tier 2 with muscles and sports classics, although it's not listed as one of the Tier 2 cars. I couldn't get anything other than the stock version to populate, not the custom one. So I had to set the Tier 2 all so that I could test the vehicle. And it was a handful to drive, but it did very well in Tier 2 with a 122.064, which is less than a second slower than the Sterling GT and a second faster than the Turismo. And that's pretty impressive for this little tuner and makes it very competitive in this tier. What I hope is that I just have a glitched version and you guys can make it work. If you can't, please put that in the comments so we can report it or find out exactly what went wrong. In conclusion, this is why testing cars like this on their appropriate track is so important. If you don't do that, you won't have all the information. And seriously, I spent close to $3 million for this thing, and it can't even do what it's made to do. Imagine if anybody else had spent that kind of money hearing that this was the fastest car out there just to put it in its natural rhythm, and it failed miserably. And if you test it any other way, you never would have guessed that. People ask, what's the fastest car? And sometimes that answer can be rather gray, and in this case, just confusing. The truth is, yes, it's basically the fastest off-road vehicle, but only if you stay on the road with it. So, yeah, if you plan to win races, you'll need it, but there's a slim chance that an off-road track will ever be turned over to on-road where you can actually give it an opportunity or put off-road into on-road. There's just no place this car works. So there is effectively a reason to buy it, but outside of racing, not really. It's a lifeless vehicle. It's a pain to drive. It feels just enough grocery getter to not look the part of a safari car, and when it tries to be a safari, it just falls flat of doing even that. So many other cars are so much cooler and look the part, and it even costs way less, which really leaves me in an odd position. Truth is, chances are you'll never need this car for the price you pay, but if you're a stickler like me, you'll probably buy it just to say it's there if you need it. So it is completely up to you. I will say if you are new, then I would stay completely away from this car. Sure, it's got HSW power, but it's not a car for newbies. It'll make you feel really good behind the wheel until you start relaxing and putting more foot in the throttle, and then it's going to make you pay for it. It's not a car for people with a heavy foot. Instead, get a drive girl. It'll get way more action, and it'll be a lot more fun to upgrade, and it'll actually help you win a race. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I hope you like this review. I really had hoped that the Monstro, there's a lot of people were saying this was the car, and I really was hoping to test it and kind of prove them right on that fact, because it's, again, I spent a lot of money to get this car and just not to get any results from it. It's very disappointing, but I'm actually becoming accustomed to this, and it's pretty sad that that's the way things are now, but we've come to the conclusion of this is what we kind of have to live with, and we just work around it, and it's why we do the testing we do. So, and if you like these vehicle reviews, if there's any other vehicles you want to test or see, there's a lot of vehicles I have access to that I guess nobody else has access to anymore. I'm going to continue to make testing with them and try to get up to speed with stuff, but just doing it to have fun and send that information out so you guys have, a good footing of where you need to be. So let me know in the comments, and I'll see what I can do. Until then, safe driving. We'll see you guys on the track.